I feel like every time I try to record, the option is somewhere else. But it's okay. I'm just complaining the Zoom interface.
They're changing all the time.
Yeah. So I have an idea for tomorrow. Also, like, I want to like keep this call not too long. Um, and yeah, I also yeah, like that's something I really needed to talk about. And I was wondering, like, is it something we have to prepare, or like how does this whole thing works? And I
Mm.
just came up with the idea that what if we just start with like telling her what we've been doing? I mean, it can be from any point of time, like it can be from the beginning or it can go backward or whatever, because it's a lot to tell. But maybe just to, communicate first, because we kind of assume that she knows something, but it's just really like basically 2 hours of what we've done, like the 1 hour of the last performance, and 1 or 2 hours of what she saw at PAF. So, I mean, of course, she's has seen some other footage, but just try to like communicate, and that will help us to understand what we've been doing
Mm.
for us as well, just as a starting point before like going into like principles, because first we have to understand what it is, I feel.
Yeah. Mm.
I mean, she might have some suggestions, and we talk anyways, but for me, I thought that would be like
I guess
natural.
like the what I feel I found it interesting what you propose. The only thing I guess I will be cautious is in how not to go into a loophole. How to, so I understanding, for instance, like this is, so I see this is almost as a ethnographic process where we situate her, but then I also, I mean, this question is often there, no? Like when is much is too much. So when mentioning something that is personal, I mean, personal include like both as a personal as a unit. When is maybe too much? In I mean, in this case, because we are working towards, I mean, with limited resources. So if we will just say it like in a chat, it's different because then there is not really a goal. Um,
Right.
well, like in this case, I guess I want to, yeah, maximize the time, the resources. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree, because uh we can't have many calls with allocated time from what we agreed. And but it's kind of connected to like what I sent you yesterday, like how did you reply? Accelerationism.
Nism. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like yeah, I mean this, we were mentioning this in the past, like this is, I mean, this comes from a specific place. People are writing in these topics.
Mm. Yeah, because
Mm.
like I feel like, if we try to like, the goal is to make it efficient, and I mean, it's not the goal, but the means is to make it efficient, to have as much input as possible from her. That doesn't mean that it's the best way for our process. I mean, anyways, we have to balance, right?
Yeah, I think it's like I guess what I feel that that's what I mentioned in the message I sent this morning. I think it's natural to have to be somewhat concerned at the beginning of a process because
Yeah.
you don't know where to go. So, I mean, for instance, in our case, we know it ends with a tour. Um, so we know it goes there. So without making things more complicated, because one can start arguing um, this question of effectiveness, um, but without being complicated. So I think like I guess I want to be efficient once I understand what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I mean, I mean that's connected to the starting of the process um that being efficient in something you don't know there's no logic in that.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 I mean, I think we have to start with proper introduction. I mean, that is that I thought, like we could just talk about what we've been doing. It could be like we talk about it, or she can ask some questions. I mean, this will naturally happen, but try to understand where we are at. I don't know if we can do it in one call or we need two calls. I mean, we can go forever just about this topic. And that's why we're talking about efficiency. But I think it's good because if we don't, if we like start with some kind of preconception, or like we assume that we know what we're doing, then we can just we could potentially waste the whole time talking about something
Yeah.
that's off, but we just assume that we're
Yeah. So I
on
guess
track.
so I guess in a way, I mean, I feel there is some, I feel a bit reluctant of doing that. I call it ethnographic process to be efficient in my head. But um, I think since the way it seems to me, the way how we work is embedded in developing trust and friendship, um, kindship, care towards another. A lot is, I think my understanding on our work is the trust that has been developed in time. So it seems to me that work comes there as an, maybe not work, but just like the results, or like, what you can see as it as a practice, what you see as a practice. Um, it's just the result of this trust evolving in time. So based on this, I think that trying to avoid that ethnographic process, I think, yeah, I agree with you that we should take the time, especially at the beginning. I mean, we should not be concerned of terms of time or how it goes, and we'll see once we engage her in that conversation how long it goes. I also, yeah, because also I think in my head it's just because we are working for 4 years. I just imagine, oh my God, this is gonna be maybe 2 sessions of 2 hours or something like that. But probably will be just actually just some time that we share what we think is relevant to share.
Yeah, because I think
Mm.
there was this. I don't know if I think I heard from you that Danny was asking you, what do we want to like? I don't know how she phrased it, but what do we want to show, or like I think she didn't say use the message like the word message, but like what, yeah, like what the message of the performance,
Yeah,
like
yeah. And yesterday, I think at some point, I think I point out that when I was being the message that I told you, if we convince her that technology is good, quote unquote, um, then we're good. It was in my head. It was in relation to that. Yeah, Danny was asking me when we have this first interview. on the work, she was asking me a few times, and she was asking me, like, what
Mm.
do you want? And then I
What
was
do you want? Yeah.
and then I was saying different things, and then she listened, and already we were drinking. So it took me like many hours, I don't know, like few hours to say something that was more deep to me. And I
Mm.
don't even remember. But I
Mm.
think she was trying to get more. I mean, it started with the question like, what do you want the people to understand from this? That is,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it was, I guess, not easy. I mean, or I guess was not easy to understand because I don't even remember what I said. I guess
Mm.
I use words that I use in the writings and things.
Mm.
Um, but but then she tried a few times, and I guess it was not close to what maybe the place that she was to go, and then she moved it to more to me as in me with my work
Mm.
in yeah, what do I want with the way who I'm working?
Yeah.
Um, what do you want people to what is it you're trying to offer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good starting point because yeah, because also we haven't really spoke about it. So having her, you know, not interviewing but asking us that question, I think it's a good starting point, and that also connects to like where we came from, and I mean we have to tell the story to some extent.
Yeah. I mean, I remember that because that was also part of the reflection where I mean, I was forced to be in that process and for the academy, and then to think about what is that I want in general as for me.
Mm.
And then I was thinking that then when I found is what I want, and I think I remember now that that's what I think what I share with Danny at the end, that I want space for the body to feel
Okay,
when working with technology.
I
So
see.
reflecting in the relation productivity and time. That's the place that I guess is close to me.
Interesting.
When I
Sorry,
reflect. Hmm.
I'm gonna just move because I'm just move to my room, but we can continue. Um, okay, how does this work? So, like, is it okay if we just like start with that question? Because I want to just dive into what you just said, and I know that this is gonna like, go a little bit further down the rabbit hole, and but I also don't want to, forget this task to think about what to, how to start tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I guess that's like a good starting point. And what you just said is something that I was reflecting before the call because I wrote to you like I have this like assignments and basically it's like writing. I have to send a draft to Nuno tomorrow, so I have to do it today.
Mhm.
And but it's like such process right now. I'm doing like reading and writing, which basically is like so detached from the body. Like, I'm just like sitting in front of the computer and doing this. And, it started to like, yeah, I have to be really conscious about like taking care of my body because I can spend all day doing this. Maybe I can become smart. Well, I don't think I become smart. I become more knowledgeable, but it doesn't mean that you know, maybe in the end I can get PhD, but is that what I want? Isn't that I want to like think about more about, let's say, body and technology, for example, then I'm missing the body part completely. Also, like when I think about like what I want with my artwork is to like have this sensation, it's about this. I like the word confrontation, but it doesn't mean that you have to be confronted. It can be like image or something that's like overwhelming. It's not what's on the screen that you can see, but like I make banners because it's big. It's just, this confrontation that like talks to the body or senses.
Mhm.
And then when I think about, I'm just like, still like reading Erin Manning, Brian Masumi, but basically this idea of like, I like this name, Sense Lab, that Erin was running. I don't know if it's still there or not, but because I remember I was once like I was never in their reading group, but I joined once a kind of like movement exercise from the guest. I don't know if he's a dancer or a visual artist, but I think their kind of focus is that it's always about the sense. So I guess they're reading a lot, like crazy. That's their job, but also they talk about works that is connected to the senses. And I'm really curious how they do it, because if they're just sitting in front of the desk, like reading and writing all day, I mean, they have to practice, and they are doing it somehow through the workshops and stuff, which like this procedure, I think it's really interesting. Like I should really learn from them. Otherwise, my body becomes, I don't know, like a robot.
Mm.
And I think that's also connected to your research in a
Yeah,
sense.
but I think I could lost it. But how can you point better how you see because I guess so you are pointing the problem of start doing this exercise of being constantly in the reading and writing, and then also you connected with the Sense Lab, the idea of how I think I got lost a bit there. So that they do also that work of reading, writing, as a practice.
I guess, I mean, that's their main job, I guess, but also they talk about senses. So you can't talk about senses if you're not using them, right?
Uh, Depends though. But I guess they are partly, yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends, I guess. But
But yeah,
if,
so yeah, please go ahead. I think it's good stuff.
yeah, if they are, let's assume that they're doing it
Mm-hmm.
in somehow, um, that's great. I mean, I should do it too. That's my point. Like I have to
Oh,
like find way to, come back to my body, but also do the assignments, for example, because I have to read and write anyways to finish my PhD, but I can't be, there 100% because
there were
then the big part is lost, like awareness of body. If that's lost, then I think I can finish my PhD, but that's probably not what I want to do. It has to come together as a practitioner also, not just as a researcher.
yeah, but so maybe I what I see it as a bit complex in your idea is because this exercise of awareness uh while doing things that are kind of mechanic. um I think a good example is dance, like when you're dancing just by expression, or when you start thinking in dance, it's different. When you start studying dance, like when you put the example of the feet, that's a good example of that. Um, the what it becomes always like if I remember when I was doing the exercise with Motion Bank, and then I was like thinking in a strategies to annotate. It was close to that exercise of me being in the space like dancing, doing the study dance, uh But also I remember, for instance, at some point I was using a ball putting a 3D space. So I'm going dancing, but when I found there is a thought that I want to maybe go back in time, since I have all this equipment, I cannot just take off the ear headset and write a note. But I put
Mm,
one do with my right hand inside of the pink ball this. And that means in the recording that there was something that I assume that maybe when I revisit the recording, I can go back in time in my in that exercise and try to point maybe I was there because I am also following my body recording. So I'm kind of like experiencing that body again
interesting.
to a certain extent. But this, I mean, I guess I'm doing this, I'm saying this because in my case, so my goal is to do the writing exercise, but it's based on my movement of my movements, right? In my case, it's of my movement. So I have some skeleton or some starting writing exercise, and from there I make ready the practice to go and dance. And nevertheless, then the material for the writing is me going to the dance. So
Mm,
so in this case, I think big part of the work, or what it takes me the most time is to be in the space. Is actually that's all this idea of the transition because it's in between me leaving the computer and me going back to the computer is all these moments that make possible the meaning, the formalized meaning back into the paper. So all these points, like I call sigils, all this invisible labor that make that possible. In my case, my exercise was in studying me, not studying formalized thoughts of somebody else or uh, reading and writing. It was more, although a formal writing was on studying my body.
yeah, I think that's great point that I was missing because to me, it's always, something binary. Well, let's say like the way I was seeing it was binary, like you're sitting and working with the text, reading or writing, versus something, let's say embodied practice that, you're moving or you're conscious about your body. But to me, like it was like completely separate the way I was seeing, but you kind of introduced the way to fill the gap or somehow like not completely like blending, but you can trace it from the other side.
But like maybe if this helps or might not help, but I think makes things more simple. It said, for instance, in that example, I was using one book, this book of choreographic. I don't remember the name, but I shared that book with you, and I also brought it with
I think,
uh,
yeah.
me. So I was studying that book in my time. So doing the reading exercise was that I was taking my notes, what I found interesting, going through the citations and finding relevant text, and then buying or doing this. Um, but I was studying me again. So I think I was trying to underline that in my case it was me the practitioner. So if in your case you're studying other ones, is I think it's a different it's a perspective.
um I see what you mean. And there's like so many ways to approach it, and I'm just that's why I'm kind of like holding back.
Wait, let me just let me to make it maybe more concrete. So I think if in your quest is in a epistemological approach or approach to know to understanding of your process of thought, regard in this case in writing in certain subjects and could be different subjects, that's concrete, that's more you in the in process making in this epistemological process. Yeah, sorry, I just like I think wanted to introduce
I think there are two things. like one is about, it's more like daily routine for myself because I have to read and write, but also I want to move to so that if I stop moving, what I write is just about, what I think, but that's not what I want. I need to be a practitioner as well so that I can, how to say, I mean, it's just like, if I'm using my whole time reading and writing, that's not what I want, basically. Whatever the
Because,
consequence is, because that's not how I want to live.
I mean, I
But
think
that,
like in a perfect case scenario, because also I could think in Sarah, and I doing here my assumptions is that, and also I think is the case why I have been thinking also that while I was reflecting while we were working and after the presentation, I thought that I might be interested in taking just the role of the choreographer and maybe be part, like maybe be sometimes part, but inside, but be more the external eye and having the choreographic function. And saying this is, and also that's what I mentioned, Sarah, in the doing the steps at the same time, so being the practitioner and analyze what you're doing is always, I mean, we will get short in our capacities until what extent can we do, uh, or not, or I also might be wrong, but something that I have experienced doing that exercise, and that was part of my conclusion with this with Motion Bank when I started research, is that it just demands so much more time.
yeah, yeah. I think the more concrete example is the process that I had yesterday visiting the studio, because that's basically what you said. I say myself as a, now I say it as a fourth eye, because I'm watching what's happening on the stage, but also I'm checking what, for example, the dramaturg is doing. I need to see the whole thing and not about how it looks on the stage, but try to understand the dynamics, what they're thinking right now in terms of like, how to make this rehearsal going.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah. Also because I mean, in this uh, in what you were doing, I think you were not part of the creative process. You're taking a role more of the more what I mean of seeing this filmmaking as in they're kind of just two subdivisions. Now, one is a creative process of content creation, and the other one is like documentary. Uh, so like I will see like the role that you are taking is more like the documentary, like creating like something that is about the process.
yeah, documentary of the creation, what's
Yeah,
happening.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but also like, I don't want to be, like in that example, like I don't want to be this me reading and writing mode, sitting just with the computer and observing and writing. So I try to come with my body. I didn't join the exercise because also I don't want to be, I need to be invisible in a way, but also I have to be there as a body because you know
Yeah,
also like for me to, it helps to understand what's happening, because if I'm just standing there
totally.
watching, it doesn't really help. So, but then like I have to see, I think because it was the first time, it was so hard to, just my focus is like switching, all over. And then I take notes, and then I watch, I change the position, I watch, try to understand. Because I thought at first it was easy because, I just have to see when they're taking notes, for example, because that's like a big part of like my interest, how people take notes, and that's converted into, I don't know, scores or something else. But it's like a mid, like let's say like a mid stage of the rehearsals. So they already have the content and they are like figuring out. little details so that they can do the run through. So
Yeah.
they already have the vocabulary, like the name of the scenes or some actions. They have the words already, so they don't like have to take notes all the time. So they can communicate. I think like this editing only happened at the briefing of the whole 3 hours. Like first 10 minutes, Becca was on the computer and typing in something, but then after that nobody was taking notes. And I'm sure that because they have limited amount of time in the studio, and I'm sure after that Becca went to computer and start writing about the reflections and how to change things. And so but that's something that I didn't see. I think I have to interview her to understand more about it, if my assumption is correct or not. But in any case, what's happening in the studio is so complex. But there's also like so interesting to see it because there were like four performers and one guy, he's like always aware of like little detail, like this prop has to be there at this scene. Like everyone's like forgetting to move this here, but he's like, the one who always spot it and do that action, like because there are a lot of props or like they change the clothes all the time. So it has to be in the place so that the next action can happen, like it's somehow precise what has to be where. So this is like something that, I mean, it happens between us too, but like nobody has the whole like detailed timeline, right? Somehow like it's distributed between different people and they're like responsible for some part of their choreography, what prop to bring where at what, like with what cue, but nobody has the whole um timeline of it, which I found it's interesting.
Mm. I was thinking now, well, I mean, because you're referring to these notes, and now I was reflecting that I remember when I have this when I was I think the last 2 week I took the time to my objective was to then to create the paper, no, from based on all because I was doing a diary every day. So at the end, if in 2 weeks, I was in a process of like sorting this, and then also reflecting sometimes in what was the goal of what I was doing to not go any everywhere. I think this is something that I want to mention, but that but I think it's normal that you are still, it seems to me that you are in your process that you are in different places and that at some point you need to take cuts and just define what is your role.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's normal now. So if I'm reflecting back then, I remember that I was one of the big, and we have maybe it will be interesting to check this chat. When you visit me, we talk at some point about annotations. I mean, in the chat in Mainz late at night. There was long,
With a plushie in the back, the Milka
yeah,
unicorn or
yeah,
something. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that I remember.
So then in those days, I was interviewing Scott and David. I remember these two from between other people because they were part of the team. And then I was asking them, so what is this thing? Um, and I think with David was straightforward also because yeah, and I think David is more pragmatic, at least in the way who I met him. He's quite simple. Um, and he was mentioning, for instance, like example of he was doing this note taking from the how was this how was called this from the in between us, I think this
Yeah.
so he was doing every day he was taking notes on that. And so it was that process of being in the space and taking notes, which I think is relevant and is connected also to the problem that we will have to solve somehow or present options for Danny not being there um, in the space with us. So, but then David was there and he was saying to me, I was there always like early and was the last one of the last people who left the space. and he was taking notes. So, but it was more, I guess, in a straightforward manner. Uh, I don't know exactly. Wait, because before I get lost in what I'm saying, then I think I'll just copy paste this notation because I remember now. I don't know to who extent, what extent I just did it back then, if it was with references or not, but I just put it here, in the chat, in the
Messenger. Yeah.
messenger. So like annotation, you can see it like, as I was mentioning, as you can annotate as from the perspective of as a creative process or a documentary. So creative process meaning being part, the annotations are going to be back to the wait, give me a second. I just need to find you because I don't see where you are here. Sorry. Here. Yeah, so then being or part of the creative process of part of more a documentary process for external so say audience or a viewer afterwards as a document or a film or what is it? Uh, so I think like in the documentary process, I think is more straightforward. You are completely not engaged in kind of giving feedback to the stakeholders on the piece. You are just
Right.
like
Like
working
a
in,
dramaturg kind of job.
which I think, and that's more like, yeah, it's you decide as uh yeah, you just decide what to do with that information, then depending of what is your purpose of what how you see that formalized. But in the creation process, that already you have subcategories, like because you can think as a if it's a is if you're the choreographer, but also said maybe if you're just the choreographer, you might take notes for yourself. So it's part of the creative process, but you're not sharing that with somebody else. So you don't have to struggle so much with language because it's just
Right.
embedded, right?
Yeah.
But if you then need to talk with other stakeholders, say performers, then you need to formalize that. But I guess also performers will be close to your practice because they're artists. So then I think your formalism doesn't have to be so extreme. They might understand you also with gestures.
Yeah.
If you go to then technicians or producers, then your language also must change
Yeah.
because they have different language.
That's very interesting because in the process yesterday, I felt like um, the performer, four of them, including Becca herself, I think they're coming from different backgrounds. So there is, but I also don't know what is a process if four of them coming from same dance background. I'm sure, like because then you already have a lot of like overlap in the language, both words and body. It's easy to communicate. But then if people are coming, like even if they're performing, working as a performer, performing in the performing arts, if they're coming from different background, they need to check in, right? There is like extra step.
Yeah.
And that's something I was interested, but also like it's hard to grasp from just, watching one rehearsal, but and also have to compare with other rehearsals, productions. Um, and that may be something I can add something, this online platform idea I had to facilitate the process, maybe. But if it's like four dancers coming from the exact same background, they all know what the moves, how they communicate, probably like this tool doesn't have to exist.
Yeah, I mean, which is kind of like part of the, I think, of why, like efforts like Lava annotation and things like that have not really being used in a massive scale because at the end people use videos.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let's come back. Yeah, it's finishing and I need
I
to
go to pee and then I come back.
same. So what were we saying?
I'm not sure right now.
We were like really into something. Oh yeah, the communication. with the dancers or whatever.
Yeah. I have a
Because it
question
came from
for you.
annotation. Yeah.
That so is Nuno okay with you doing that process?
Yeah, I told him. It didn't
So
come from him, but
so I found it interesting because I mean I'm just like thinking like Nuno, no, like right now trying to think, and then I'm just thinking that maybe he sees like okay, yeah, of course you need to do that because you need to see the users, you need to see the target group, so for you to do a better uh, or like that it will help you to create an app or
yeah,
something that people can use, which I think that's not gonna be, I mean, or I feel that it's like, say, even if you do like doing an app will just have certain life. So even if it's the best app in the world, because so it just have a span of life. So that will be such a, I mean, that's what I'm saying is that I feel this is my interpretation of that he will be thinking like that. But I think like say for instance you will take that role of really trying to use all the resources that you have at hand to create the best app possible. Um, that will be such a waste of money, I think, for all the for because at the end it vanish. Uh, and also I'm thinking for a business perspective, if you manage to do the best app ever in that for that target group, that is already we have this conversation with Florian. One of the problems of Motion Bank is there is no users. You have no users to sustain the team.
yeah,
So so from that perspective, even if you say you don't have the problem, so then it's users and it's a good business, it's a good idea, then you have to switch it to a business place
yeah,
where it just be do something that the model can how to say this, like the problem in doing something good like with an artifact like an app is that you need infrastructure to maintain it. So like you are not Microsoft. So uh so in case you manage through the education to create an app, that app, which happens sometimes, like you hear that from people who are doing PhDs, at the end, often they have this, if they're doing a good job, often they have the chance of like, or going to postdocs right away because this is relevant, or to go to the private sector because their research is good. So in your case, say for instance, you just move to develop for Microsoft the app, and then it's a good until it dies naturally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot to say about this because obviously I thought about this problem or question, and I don't have a good like answer to what you said. But of course, like if I think about like broadening scope so that people would be interested in actually spending money. I think I told you before, but that's probably like more connected to, I don't know, like yoga or Pilates, like something that people
Right.
would
Yeah.
like to, um, people with money can actually afford and get some kind of content that they can practice,
Yeah. What is
which,
demand?
yeah, exactly. Which
Yeah.
I think is not a horrible idea, right? I mean, I'm not saying that I'm interested in that, but I wouldn't like completely rule it out. But it's so funny because I heard Nuno is like in touch with someone about a potential collaboration, but they're like teaching yoga. And he was like, no, I don't want to do something that is not artistic. Like
Nuno
for him,
said,
exactly, or creative or something. For
okay.
him, like yoga is something that is like,
Okay.
it's like a product. And I
Okay.
found it so funny in so many ways. I don't know about detail of this idea, so I don't know if it's actually, something to. Well, it seems like they want to sell something to, like, but also it's coming from, I don't know, some kind of body exercise, the yoga or something. Like to me, I don't see immediately as something, is it creative or not? But he clearly said this, like if he's doing a collaboration, it has to be something creative. and I found it like, yeah, it's just funny.
This is very interesting because I was also reflecting a bit on so you the paragraph you sent, and this I guess this is something that I miss from my own work. I mentioned this to you in months in the past, and I guess it's going there somehow, like to have more a political take on what I'm doing. Um, so reflecting on, I think this example is very interesting of, the artistic, but you like, it will be interesting to know if what Nuno, what was the words he used. It was artistic of creative, because I start seeing that, for instance, yesterday I was in a local area here, and I bought this ring from an artisan. And then something that you can see in philosophy, that is like, you see like how interesting, especially in that spectrum of philosophy of technology, then it goes really clear from, like the artisan, when this idea of an artisan becomes artistic. Um, so creation is not part of the discussion. Uh,
Okay.
creation is there. Creation is just, it's an ontological discussion, like how things comes to be in a more creative or less creative. I mean, there's a different topic. And then when you speak about, then, like, what this idea of the um or this positioning between art and, I will say in this case, when I think it's good, it's interesting how modernity, or how Western modernity sees the creative creation, or creative endeavors in, like design, or so liberal arts. That's something, for instance, in Spanish, like I didn't heard. Maybe I was not studying artes plásticas before, so I was not really part of this conversation. I never heard anything like liberal arts before. Like in Netherlands, I think that's like, or in other languages that I heard, that's literally the translation of like artes plásticas is liberal arts. Like it's a, well, you have like applied arts. It's very
Okay.
different. Apply it to liberal, and in that sense, I guess I was trying to say this of is in relation to capitalism, on production and
Mm.
reproduction. That is always in relation to, yeah, like to produce goods. I mean, something that it starts in like extraction or colonialism, and just decants until so now is means of keeping ways to maintain ways how extraction still can be possible, until we create more things that we don't need. We have then the problem that we have with the milieu, and just putting more cars and putting more shit that we don't need, and just accumulation of things, because our system is based on goods and production of things. Um, so again, then this, so applied or liberal, in that sense, art is so privilege, because art is not questioned by nobody. I mean, is not questioned in terms of it's not questioned in terms of its functionality as applied arts.
Mm. But what is it like
I mean, an
on?
example, a clear example, like to not be more complex, is like the state of the art of art. Actually, it questions the function of the artist. But I
Mm.
would say, like, I don't think it's not true. I think speaking of the state of the art is to I think that's not true. Like in what I perceive in places that I'm traveling around in Europe, that is very privileged. Then I see the artists are now concerned with things that they were not concerned before. I mentioned this idea
Mm.
before, like some years ago, when a friend from Brazil was passing, and he was asking me to give feedback, and I gave feedback. One of the feedback I gave is like, your work needs to be more deconstruct, because his work was too much on the face. It was talking of things that will make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Back then, and then I have this reflection of felt that I have been domesticated myself,
Right.
and so I mentioned that before. So back then till now the art in Europe is very much in these places that I am often navigating. Now is more the other way around. The artists are actually, I have almost a discussion with some people in PAF, in maybe it's not necessarily the specific example, but the case was that I feel I was protecting a bit this liberal sense, while the rest of them were very fast, like ramping up and saying like, no, it's not possible, like, Palestine, and
Mm.
like just a feast on the air. So again, this is to say like, I also don't think that is necessarily the panorama of all the art. I think Puff is a good example that not everybody, although vast majority of Puff is in, we have to take action as artists. We cannot be as an isolated artist confirming about each other. Um, so yes, I close out some parentheses there. Like a clear example of this idea of the applied with liberal being an abstraction, and applied is like a designer use creativity. Nevertheless, when a designer when you are creating a chair, the chair must be functional, and the artist designer can be creative as much as they want to create the chair, but the chair must be functional. This is not the case when with a painting or a performance or a picture. Is liberal.
Mm. I see.
It's free from functionality.
But how does it, you said, um, for example, let's say like political view, for Palestine or whatsoever, that is, you mean that you're talking about that from the functionality perspective point of view, that,
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to detach, like, because it's very complicated. Like now we are living, especially the place where we are living as Europeans, artists are questioning their function as as artists, like yeah. And so yeah, but that's what I'm trying to keep it as a brackets. Because for me also as a criticism, and also in, like, for instance, in the talk of Silvia Federici, she was mentioning that too, that I think was very important coming from the South, that she was mentioning, hey, slow down, like just realize this is not just happening now, this is happening forever. And she was giving some specific examples in Africa and South America with numbers and things that make you feel like, oh wow, it's a bit in your face. So um, so this is part of like, it's a convoluted situation that we are in Europe, that is in the art field. Um, I think it started somehow, or yeah, because of this problem they have in Germany, because of the history with Israel and Palestine. I mean, Israel, so then Palestine, and all these things that friends, curators, and people and institutions, friends, they have to take measurements given by the government, like to not select artists based on their nationalities because of the conflict. So for political reasons. Um, so because of that, this has a drop effect. So me in Belgium, then I get affected because some of my friends, they are suffering, although they are not really suffering, but you see what I mean. Um, all this that I'm saying is a big, uh, I think it's a big parenthesis on the conversation, because I still think art is liberal. The function of art is not necessary. There's not really a function with art.
I see it from like other I see it other way that like this whole discussion is just co-opted by capitalism. Like it's kind like what you said, like it's already happening in other places, but for example, Palestine or I don't know, Ukraine, it's just become visible and also, I'm not saying I don't want to say it this way, but people like take advantage of the situation to um like what you said about function. I don't think it's like functionality, but to, I don't know how to say it properly, but basically like it's more like a, something you can sell that you are saying that you are pro Palestine. Oh, that sounds really bad. But, like it's because it's so concrete and it's easy. It's also not connected to your background, but you're doing something good. I mean, it's the same with, like BLM or global warming. I mean, I know that people are, you know, most of the people are serious about it, and I'm not doing activism at the moment, and I have huge respect to, people doing this, but also there are some people taking advantage of it. And after all, everything is co-opted by capitalism.
Yeah, totally. So, but I think like I think this is part of still what I see it as a parenthesis in the
Yeah, but that's what I found interesting because then like is art like actually liberal?
maybe that's not the word, but maybe just say free in the sense of like what I say like is again like say like the example of the designer like making a chair. So this idea of form of content, or does it form follows function? Doesn't function follows form? It's part of this. So say in this is part of these are consequences of modernity and separation. In the past, there was not separation of an architect from artist for a scientist. This is something that appears at some point from Aristotle when he started introducing the categories with other words. But
Hmm.
I was mentioning that in the long message that I mentioned. He introduces the idea of separation of knowledges. And then from him, he started putting positions in society. Like the artisan is not the same as the politician. Uh, um, so this following up until modernity, like, and modernity is like the extreme case of separation of functions. So then going then to the designer, like the industrial designer making a chair, the chair is functional. So so in terms of content of the designer is you can say somehow like the content is like do making the chair, but like or like the content the art of the designer is the chair, and he can apply artistic things to create a chair, but the functionality must be there. While in art, and then could be in different realms of art, you cannot even, for instance, like all designers can be creative in their chairs, but they have to be functional. While all the like you cannot speak about unification of content for art. Like all there is not such a thing as all artists doing the same kind of content.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a good way to say it because designers also they're not doing the same content.
So it's but say like in the but that's the thing that like there's when the artisan like normally the artisan in like that's at some point you can say like the evolution of an artisan is a designer. The artisan is somebody who works with form, like with materials, and it gives them form that is not in or at least that's how it's being studied. That is not being like the artisan is not being seen as an academic or as a person who is thinking too much in his creation is somebody who is making things like this, you know. But we don't know. Maybe the guy who made this also was writing or doing a poetry around this the framework or something. But our assumption is that the artisan is just the guy who you see and working with these pin sets and then following the materials.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Like so, and so I think somehow like then the evolution of this artisan in working with materials and creating in concrete forms is like the designer. Uh, like the like then you can say like then the artist, and that's why perhaps could one can argue that maybe the plastic arts um they are seen as the artists because they work. I mean, it's more straightforward. They work with materials and they create forms that often don't have functionality. Is their goal is more in creating frameworks that reflect certain things that if you put together like artist A and artist B, their content might be very different. Also, the materials will be very different. Like say even no, say like just maybe artist A and artist B are working with similar materials, they will be very different in the way how they approach the form, working with the same materials. In that sense, it's free. The form is free in shape itself through the artist in something that is quite different from artist A to artist B. While in the designer, from designer making chairs A, artist designer making chairs B, the form and function are quite like the materials are when the materials of the designer A and B are similar, the function at the end of the form will be the same actually. It will be the chair.
Mm,
So in that sense is not free. From before starting is not free.
mm, I see. I mean, it doesn't have to be the same functionality, but it serves a functionality in the end. Well, it's a function
What do you mean?
because you can design a chair that has, I don't know, something else that you can use as a table as well.
But that then there are like you can put this down until what is the base ground of that is to sit. Could be added. You can see is like A point B or A point C, but at the end is a A. It's a chair where people sit.
Yeah, but also like if you invent something that is, I don't know, that we don't have yet, something that you can, I don't know, stand on. Well, we do have such a such a apparatus, but that's still a design, right? It's not like even if you invent a new function, so it's not about like serving existing function. It doesn't have to be like existing functionality. It can be new, but still it serves function. Although on the other hand, in art, it doesn't have well, and that's a tricky part because you can also claim that you build a chair and that's art, but
Mhm.
then it has to imply something more than just, like, is it like, for example, if it has something like a social aspect that the way people sit, that they
Yeah.
manifest whatever. So it's the the goal is not the functionality, or
But I think I feel where you're trying to go, and I partially agree with you, but in the way how I see it, or maybe I will add to the conversation is that culture takes that because could be an artist, could be, I mean, and probably in history, like that could be the case that maybe the chair or certain modern things that we have passed from an artist, and often should be the case, like it's people who are very gifted and they know different things and they create something. Is through so it's an artist creating an artwork that is functional. I mean, that is like, or is something that it comes out through the experience with the public audience is the culture that define its functionality, and its culture would define, yeah, if it's the chair or if it's something that it will culture. So it's out of the artist. It's not on the hands of the artist. It is in the hands of the culture to define what if it's something that becomes like something like that can be reproduced many times
Mm,
and be an standardized. So then an artisan, a woodworker, can make it without the creative process to go into but just like in making the apparatus.
mm, interesting. I mean, hmm.
But this, I
Somehow,
mean,
yeah.
yes, yes, please, yes, please go ahead.
No, somehow I was thinking like I didn't know about this until like recently, but the I was reading something, then I found Beyonce copied like Rose's choreography in her music video, and
Oh
there's
yeah,
even like a YouTube video that's like side by side, and like it's just
true.
showing like I don't know 80% of the song, they're copied from Rosa's Dance to Roses, which I found funny. I mean, it's not really like related to what you said. I mean, in a way, yes, because it's taking some kind of art and putting it to the commercial world, although it's not like adapted to something functional or anything.
It is functional because it is part like in media, like it has this function of
Yeah,
entertaining.
true,
Our
true.
art doesn't have that function. Oh, somehow like that what people argue, like art doesn't have the function of entertaining, like really art or like interesting art. It's not the goal of the art is to entertain.
True.
Although in media, is that the function, like artists making movies, Hollywood movies, and those are called artists. They make productions, they entertain. That's why we have also a subcategory that is like cine art.
I see. Yeah.
But this said also is like, I mean, this conversation that we're having right now, this is when we met, that was the place that I was, like my project of designing art was coming from this. And I guess my position was more radical in this binary separation between the artist and designer. And I did some research in this field. And that was partly, I guess, that's why I stopped dancing and then trying to learn design when I didn't know before. And in in the process, then I also can say that I also learned to modulate how I said what I said, because it can, if it's not situated, it can be taken really wrong. Like I make many, not enemies, but many people like from art, like just from my field, were not happy with what I was doing in my approach.
Mm,
Um, and also I also get to learn that there were design, of course there are designers who are artists, so who are being more experimental. So this is not so binary as to this is that's what I said is like it's a consequence or it's a curse of modernism and separation on all these things, because
yeah.
at the core, if somebody is more, I will say, use this creative as with a capital C, somebody's creative or being in an ontological process of creation, ontogenesis, um, that it doesn't matter. Like actually you can see like there are designers that I mean there are artists that I sometimes follow. Then when I get to know their history, they are formed as designers, and then I'm okay, that's why their form is so, I don't know, in certain way. Uh, so like in my also there was one of my uh, conclusions when in my initial research is that is more the case that you will find or is rare the case to find find designers who are doing art. That was one of the conclusions I found in my research, because
Okay.
if you go through formal education, then the education they give you as a designer is to work towards function.
it's also tricky because designer can mean so many different things, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
just the
HCI
word,
research is also design.
yeah, just you use design for you design that you design the menu of the week. Like the like so instead of like this art, that's a problem somehow with art because art like that's I guess all this conversation I introduces when you start like when you said about this reflection with Nuno because then
I
the at some point in history the artisan became an artist when it started blending with other things, I don't know, with more status of yeah.
mm. So what we're saying, I got lost a bit. I know that's just that the like, designer can mean so many things, and people often associate it with graphics designer, and that's a big
Which
problem.
but also I mean it's a big problem, but at the same time, like as I will just say, like historically, and that was part of my when I was in mines, that was the first time that I learned that in Germany, for instance, like the like to study graphic design, what was the like the I don't remember exactly the words, but it was something like because I have to ask Florian, artists, what are they studying? And they were studying graphic design. And yeah, the word was communication. Yes, that
Mm,
the word was communication. And that means like graphic design, which in somehow that's a consequence of, and I guess in Germany make more sense because this comes through the Frankfurt School and taught on this is the Frankfurt School also are the ones who proposed this idea of acceleration. So the school of accelerationism, it comes through the philosophy school of the Frankfurt, what is called as the Frankfurt School. And uh so like Bauhaus also those all this comes from this and this is in relation also to information, like information theory and how concrete are you when you're doing things. In that sense, then one also can argue that's why like art is free. Art is not put in within all these other aspects that design is very intricate because a good designer is an artist, yeah.
yeah, because I was seeing already, like in a way, if let's say we just simplify it, if it's about having functionality or not as a end product, then you can, if you know how to design design how to build something that has functionality, you can also make something that doesn't have a functionality. I'm just
Mhm.
putting it in a very simple way, but
Yeah, okay, yeah, 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 yeah,
it
yeah.
could be vice versa, because if someone who's coming from the idea of like always like building a chair that you cannot sit, then probably you can build a chair that you can sit. So like I think it's like a different side of the same coin
But this
in
is
a
interesting.
way.
You're mentioning this is interesting. Like, so there's two things I would like to add this shortly. One is that I was reflecting, I went to see a performance of a friend of mine as a general rehearsal, and the guy, he's somebody who's a set director, so he studied the theater. And I was reflecting while he was doing the things that he do, that he does so many things. Also, he's older now, older than me, and he worked with sound. He does like also the scenography. He does everything, and but at the same time, I was like reflecting like that back then. Also, when I started studying theater, I thought that was like from the arts, the less useful in a long term because at the end you can act or not. Is I think is in a way is like that. It's not that there are things that as an actor you can train to improve, your body, your voice, your presence, but you can act or not. It's that simple as that or not. That's why people who doesn't have training sometimes they're just good actors, and they're the case of many actors in Hollywood. They just do some audition and they're good. Maybe they have good looks also, but also not only that, but they can embody this thing. So in that sense, also, so in my case, I choose dance, and back then, because in dance back then, yeah, I guess I come from school, formal school. So then you need to learn, your body needs to work. So like to be a better dancer is not so much as in that formal way, is not so much as in being good dancer or not, but you need to be more flexible every day. You need to learn more about the position of your body, be more aware of your body. So there is this linear progression in your career as dancer. So that's one of the reasons what I thought like I want to study dance. So now that I say this from art, I also want to introduce like I have a friend of mine that I respect very much the way he works. He's a designer. He is somebody who I think he struggled with concept because he's somebody that I met in Seeds. He's an industrial designer. He's very gifted woodworker. And also he has this formation, in secondary where you choose, and then in Belgium you have this training that you can graduate even before and then just be ready to work. So from certain point when you are in high school, you can start learning to work with machines and certain things. So I think he did that thing. But so in Seeds, like which is often released academic plays, then you see like then maybe he's not somebody who's very engaged. But when there are things in Belgium or around that he can join, he's one of the person who's built the most because the rest of us we can just speak. Like he can build things in an organic manner. So for instance, like something that I admire of him is that he works with wood, and I at some point I tried to work with him and see how is that he works because uh I'm trying to go with my concepts, and he's very simple. He just take a piece of wood and he start doing a similar process how I see also painters do. That's what I was trying to say. Like I think in my example of my theater maker artist, I thought in that moment that also he's not really good in making the scenography. He's not. That's not his. He can do it, but he's not. He's not a fine artist. Um, so I thought at that point, like, it's so much. I thought like, I was reflecting on that that's so more useful for an artist to study fine arts because then you learn to work with materials. I was just thinking that for myself. Then going back to Robin, he started doing a similar process for a painter on a sculpture. He put a piece of wood. He might start feeling the wood in different ways, not necessarily from an artistic or what I will call an artistic conceptual perspective, but he
Mm.
just start like have different piece of wood and this is the wood he needs. So in terms of functionality also, and from there he will start carving and trying to unveil what is from the piece of wood, and then he will do different processes and work in a series of time for some months of years doing the same process different times. And at the end the results are very artistic. Here he's like his when he do a he's not doing chairs for instance, but then sometimes I see, and then then I say like, is this a chair or this is a bank? And he's not saying yes or no. He says that it's an object, and I guess, but it's an object that it has the affordance for me as user to sit on it. Uh, so it's very interesting the way who he does his work. It's very artistic.
Mm.
Uh,
Interesting.
nevertheless, at the end, he will just sell it in design stores, specialized.
Yeah, I have some things say, but this is closing, and I think let's close it here. But I'll send you something with regard to that. But I think that the process is very artistic, and yeah, that's just yeah, we just can keep the conversation open.
Okay, and then we meet tomorrow with Danny at 10
Yeah,
Brussels time. Yeah.
great.
Right. Have a good one. Enjoyed your working today.
Thanks. I'll enjoy writing. Ciao, ciao.